Good evening, and welcome to another journey through time. Tonight, we're going to settle in and learn about a remarkable invention, one that helped countless people survive the cold, harsh winters that seemed endless. This simple yet ingenious creation was born out of necessity, a necessity that many of us might not think about today when we can flick a switch and be warm in seconds. But back then, keeping warm was no simple feat. Let me take you back to the winter of 1742, when a man by the name of Benjamin Franklin changed everything with a little invention known as Franklin's stove. Before we begin, let's take a moment to relax. Close your eyes, let your shoulders drop, and take a slow, deep breath in and out. Let go of any thoughts of the day. Allow the calm of the evening to settle in. We're going to take a peaceful journey back in time, one that's as warm as the stove we'll be learning about. So just let your mind drift, and let's begin. Winter, a season that carries a certain weight, doesn't it? The cold creeping in, seeping through the cracks of windows and doors, chilling your bones no matter how many layers you put on. The days are shorter, the nights longer, and the darkness feels colder, almost like it has a life of its own. Now imagine you're living in the 18th century. No central heating, no electric blankets, no instant warm drinks from a kettle. Your warmth depends entirely on a fire. But that fire, oh, that fire can be a tricky thing. You see, long before we had the luxury of modern heating systems, people relied on open fires to keep them warm. A simple hearth, perhaps, in the center of the room. Sounds comforting, right? A little fire to cozy up to at the end of the day. But in reality, those open flames often brought more harm than good. The heat was inefficient, burning through fuel far too quickly, leaving rooms chilly once the fire died down. Worse still, those fires filled the air with smoke, making it harder to breathe, causing soot to accumulate on walls, and often, yes, often leading to dangerous house fires. Imagine the dread of winter nights, sitting in front of a fire, waiting for it to do its job, but instead feeling like you're more at risk of burning down the house than feeling warm. But this is where the story takes a turn. A man known for his curiosity and endless tinkering saw the problem and decided to do something about it. Benjamin Franklin, already a well-known figure for his inventions and wisdom, took a long look at the cold winter nights and realized that there had to be a better way. Franklin, a man who had already given us many of the inventions we rely on today, set his sights on creating something that would forever change the way people stayed warm. Now, before we go any further, let's take a moment to think about what it meant to endure the winter in the 18th century. No modern technology, no insulation, and no way to escape the biting cold when it crept in at night. You would wake up to floors that felt like ice, with every breath visible in the air. The chill would settle into your bones as you bundled up in layers of wool and fur, but still the cold was there. You'd sit around your fire, eyes half closed from the smoke, but at least you were warm, or at least you hoped you were. Franklin, in his endless wisdom, saw all of this. He understood that something had to change, and so he set out to make that change happen. In 1742, he created something that would forever alter how people experienced winter. His invention wasn't just another stove, it was Franklin's stove, a work of genius that would take the warmth and make it work smarter, not harder. This was no ordinary fireplace or open flame. This was a stove that didn't just burn through fuel inefficiently. It trapped heat, circulated it throughout the room, and kept the warmth where it belonged inside the house and not up the chimney. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at what led Franklin to this point. You might be wondering, why was Franklin so determined to fix something as basic as heating well? That was the brilliance of him. You see, he wasn't just thinking about his own comfort, he was thinking about the comfort of everyone. People needed warmth to survive. In those days, without reliable heating, winters could be lethal. The elderly, children, and anyone with health problems were especially vulnerable to the cold. Those who didn't have a proper hearth or stove were left with only one option: to bundle up and hope for the best. But for those who could afford the luxury of a fire, it often didn't work out as hoped. Smoke filled the room, causing eye irritation and making the air hard to breathe. Some even fell ill because the smoke lingered in the air too long. So Franklin's goal wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. And so in 1742, Franklin got to work. He wasn't a man to shy away from a challenge. And as we all know, necessity is the mother of invention. After much thought, tinkering, and perhaps a bit of trial and error, Franklin unveiled his solution: a stove that would heat a room more effectively than any other at the time without wasting fuel or filling the house with smoke. This wasn't just a stove, it was a revolution in heating. The design was unique, with a box-like structure that helped to trap heat and direct it out through a pipe rather than letting it disappear up a chimney. It used a process of convection, circulating warm air around the room, providing even heat throughout. The stove was far safer than its predecessors, and it didn't require constant tending like an open fire. Can you picture it? A room warm from every corner, no more smoke clouding the air, no more cold creeping up from the floor, and no more risk of burning down the house. Franklin's stove changed the way people lived in the winter months, and it provided more than just warmth. It provided a sense of security. Now, let's think about the legacy of Franklin's stove. It wasn't just an invention. It was a key to better living. Franklin's stove made life easier, safer, and more comfortable for families across the colonies and beyond. It wasn't just for the wealthy either. His design was practical. and could be built and used by anyone. Franklin, as always, had a way of making the impossible seem simple. The impact of his stove went far beyond just heating it, showed how innovation could make life better for everyone. And so, as we lay back and let the quiet of the evening envelop us, remember that the warmth you feel today, whether it's from a heater, a stove, or a fireplace, is in part thanks to the genius of Benjamin Franklin. The simple idea that warmth should not be a luxury, but a right for everyone, is one that has shaped how we experience winter to this day. And now, as we drift off to sleep, let the warmth of Franklin's legacy settle around you, comforting you, as it did for so many others all those years ago. Imagine you're sitting by the fire in the middle of winter, hoping the warmth will spread through your home. You've bundled yourself in layers, hoping the fire will be enough to chase away the chill. But no matter how much fuel you throw on the flames, it never seems to get warm enough. The fire burns brightly, but the heat doesn't stay with you. It rises up the chimney and escapes into the cold air, leaving the room colder than before. As you huddle closer to the flames, you realize the warmth is fleeting. The fire's power is wasted, and all you're left with is smoke filling the room and a chill creeping back into your bones. As you sit there, the flickering flames dance in front of you, teasing you with their warmth. But the heat never seems to reach your skin. You feel it for a moment, just a fleeting sensation, before it vanishes, sucked away by the chimney. The cold seems to have a life of its own, seeping into your bones, relentless and unforgiving. Every time you add more wood, it burns bright for a short while, but the heat doesn't last. The room stays damp and cold, and you can almost hear the wind howling outside, mocking your efforts to stay warm. You start to feel the familiar discomfort in your chest, that tightness from the smoke in the air. It clings to the fabric of your clothes, the smell lingering in your nostrils, a reminder that the fire meant to provide comfort is also a source of pollution. Every breath you take feels heavier, each exhale mixing with the thick haze filling the room. Your eyes sting from the smoke, your throat feels dry, and the warmth you sought now feels out of reach, slipping away with every gust of air through the cracks of the door. The worst part, you can't escape it. You can't escape the cold that creeps in from every corner, nor the smoke that follows you like an unwanted companion. There's no way to make it stop. The fire is doing its best, but the old stove doesn't have the power to fight back the winter. You're left with no choice but to endure, hoping for the warmth that never comes, knowing that soon you'll have to add more logs to the fire. More logs, more smoke, more heat lost to the cold, and the cycle begins again. You try adding more logs to the fire, and yet the result is the same. More smoke, more heat lost to the chimney. Those old-fashioned stoves and fireplaces were designed to burn fuel, but they didn't hold on to the warmth for long. The heat would rise and vanish up the chimney, leaving the room colder and colder. It's like trying to catch the sun with your hands. You can see the warmth, but you can never hold on to it. The fire may look comforting, but in truth, it was doing a poor job of keeping you warm. The cold still managed to find its way into the corners of the room, mocking the fire's efforts. You try adding more logs to the fire, and yet the result is the same: more smoke, more heat lost to the chimney. Those old-fashioned stoves and fireplaces were designed to burn fuel, but they didn't hold on to the warmth for long. The heat would rise and vanish up the chimney, leaving the room colder and colder. It's like trying to catch the sun with your hands. You can see the warmth, but you can never hold on to it. The fire may look comforting, but in truth, it was doing a poor job of keeping you warm. The cold still managed to find its way into the corners of the room, mocking the fire's efforts. And as the fire crackles and hisses, you begin to notice something else. The warmth is uneven. One side of your body might be toasty, while the other remains frozen. You shift, trying to catch the heat, but it always seems just out of reach. The fire's glow creates shadows on the walls, and those shadows seem to grow longer with each passing minute. It feels as if the room itself is mocking your attempts to warm up. The cold is so persistent, so invasive, that it starts to feel personal. Every time you throw another log on the fire, it feels like a futile attempt, like you're just throwing your time and effort into something that will never work. The old stove seems to be fighting you rather than working with you. It feels like a constant battle. You tend to the fire, you adjust the logs, but in the end, the same result: more smoke, more wasted energy, and less comfort. Even when the flames are dancing brightly, the warmth doesn't last. The cold that's settled into your bones doesn't seem to care about the heat of the flames. It doesn't care how hard you try. It simply waits for you to tire, to give in to the reality that you can't fight the winter. As you sit there, staring into the flickering flames, you start to wonder if there's a better way. You wonder if it's even possible to stay warm in this cold, harsh world. The fire is supposed to be your ally, your shield against the relentless winter, but instead, it feels more like a temporary fix, something that gives you just enough warmth to keep going for a few more hours before it fades again. What good is a fire if it can't hold on to its warmth? What good is a stove if it can't keep you warm when the snow is piling up outside and the wind howls through the cracks in the walls? It's at that moment, as you sit there defeated, that you begin to understand the frustration that so many people must have felt in these conditions. The winter cold is not just uncomfortable, it is relentless. It's a battle that never seems to end, and the tools at your disposal don't seem to offer much help. The fire might offer temporary comfort, but it's a comfort that comes with a price. The smoke, the soot, the inefficiency, it all adds up. You start to feel like there must be a better way, some solution to this endless struggle against the elements. And then, as you think about it, you remember the stories of Benjamin Franklin. You remember his reputation as a thinker, an inventor, someone who could look at a problem and come up with a solution that no one else had thought of. Franklin, the man who had already given the world the lightning rod and bifocal glasses, had also seen the limitations of traditional stoves. He had noticed the same issues you're experiencing: the heat that rises and escapes, the smoke that fills the room, the feeling of never quite being warm enough. Franklin, with his keen mind, had come to the conclusion that there had to be a better way. Franklin's genius lay in his ability to recognize patterns in everyday life and to think critically about how to solve problems that most people simply accepted as a part of their reality. He saw how the cold and the smoke were taking away from the comfort and safety that a fire should provide, and so he set about finding a way to make the fire work for people, not against them. He didn't just accept that fires had to be inefficient or dangerous. He knew that with the right design, with the right understanding of how heat worked, he could create something better. As you sit there thinking about Franklin's brilliance, you begin to wonder what it would be like to have a stove that actually worked the way it was supposed to. Imagine a stove that could keep the warmth in the room, that could distribute heat evenly, and that didn't leave you choking on smoke or worrying about the fire spreading. Imagine a stove that didn't waste fuel, that didn't send the heat up the chimney, but instead used the heat in the air to warm the entire room. Imagine, just for a moment, the kind of comfort that would come with such an invention. In 1742, Franklin made this dream a reality. He created what we now call Franklin's stove. His design was revolutionary. He realized that the key to efficient heating wasn't just making the fire bigger or hotter. It was about controlling the way heat circulated. Instead of letting the heat rise and escape, Franklin's stove trapped it, circulating the warm air around the room. The stove didn't just burn the fuel more efficiently, it also made the heat last longer, giving people a much-needed reprieve from the cold without the constant need to tend to the fire. Franklin's stove was a game changer, not just for him, but for everyone who lived through those long cold winters. It allowed people to stay warm without the constant struggle of adding logs to the fire or dealing with the dangers of smoke and soot. For the first time, people had a reliable, safe way to heat their homes, and it came at a time when survival was often a matter of how well you could withstand the cold. With Franklin's stove, families could huddle around the warmth without the fear of smoke poisoning or the risk of a fire getting out of control. The heat would remain in the room, slowly and steadily keeping everyone comfortable through the night. No more was the warmth fleeting or unreliable. With Franklin's design, warmth was something people could count on, something that would be with them long after the fire had burned down. And so, as you sit by the fire, imagining the difference Franklin's stove could have made, you begin to realize just how important his invention was, not just for the comfort it provided, but for the safety it ensured. He had not only made winter survivable, but had done so with an eye toward practicality and innovation. And in that innovation, he had brought warmth to a world that had long been plagued by cold. In the years that followed, Franklin's stove would go on to be adopted widely, changing the way people experienced winter forever. It would save lives, improve health, and make winter more bearable for everyone who used it. And while modern heating systems may have long replaced Franklin's design, his spirit of innovation and his dedication to improving daily life remain a part of our lives today. So, as you feel the warmth of your own heater or fire tonight, think back to Franklin and his invention. Think of how he changed the world with one simple, brilliant idea. And as the cold winter night stretches out before, you know that you're not just wrapped in the warmth of modern technology. You're wrapped in the legacy of Benjamin Franklin's ingenuity, keeping you safe, comfortable, and warm. Even worse, the smoke that poured from the fire didn't just escape up the chimney, it filled the room. Thick, acrid smoke swirled around the room, stinging your eyes and making it hard to breathe. The soot from the smoke and the burning fuel settled on every surface, darkening the walls and polluting the air you breathed. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was dangerous. Breathing in that smoke day after day could lead to respiratory problems, making already difficult winters even more unbearable. And worse still, the constant smoke and poor ventilation created a fire hazard. The slightest misstep, a spark out of place, could turn your cozy room into a dangerous inferno. Even worse, the smoke that poured from the fire didn't just escape up the chimney, it filled the room. Thick, acrid smoke swirled around the room, stinging your eyes and making it hard to breathe. The soot from the smoke and the burning fuel settled on every surface, darkening the walls and polluting the air you breathed. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was dangerous. Breathing in that smoke day after day could lead to respiratory problems, making already difficult winters even more unbearable. And worse still, the constant smoke and poor ventilation created a fire hazard. The slightest misstep, a spark out of place, could turn your cozy room into a dangerous inferno. You might have thought that keeping the fire under control would be enough, but the smoke told a different story. It clung to the ceiling, stubborn and persistent, swirling around, filling the air until the entire room was thick with it. You could feel the weight of it, the heaviness in your chest as each breath became harder. Your skin felt grimy, the smell of soot clinging to your clothes and hair, and it seemed impossible to escape. No matter how much you tried to open a window or shift the logs, the smoke refused to leave. The room meant to be a place of warmth and comfort now felt like a trap air thick with danger, where every cough and wheeze reminded you of the cost of staying warm. And it wasn't just your health at risk. The longer you sat there, the more you could feel the unease growing in the back of your mind. You knew that smoke wasn't just irritating, it was toxic. Each breath you took could be taking years off your life, a slow accumulation of damage you couldn't escape. It wasn't just the soot that left its mark, but the invisible toxins drifting in the air, poisoning everything in the room. You wondered how many others had endured this day in and day out, knowing that no matter how hard they worked to keep the fire alive, the smoke and soot were a constant reminder of their struggles. What was the point of a warm fire if it was slowly suffocating you from within? But perhaps the worst part was the fear, the ever-present threat of fire. The slightest mistake, the smallest spark, and suddenly the very thing that was supposed to keep you safe could turn against you. The logs could shift, a piece of burning wood could fall out, or the chimney could catch fire from all the buildup of soot. One spark, one slip, and the cozy room you had tried to create for yourself could become an inferno. The thought of it was unbearable. After all, it wasn't just about the heat anymore. It was about survival. Every time you stoked the fire, you risked it turning into something much worse, something beyond your control. The fire that had once seemed like a warm embrace, something to hold you through the cold nights, now felt more like a threat. The flames danced merrily, but the smoke, the soot, the smell, they were all reminders that you were playing with something dangerous. You couldn't help but think of how many homes had burned down over the years because of a misplaced spark, a poor chimney or a fire that had been tended to with too much carelessness. The walls around you were close and closing in the fire, a constant presence in your mind and in the room. You wanted to enjoy the warmth, but the constant vigilance, the awareness that every flicker of flame could be your undoing, made it nearly impossible. It wasn't the fire that caused the problem. It was everything that came with it. And with every breath you took, you realized you were stuck in a vicious cycle. You needed the fire to survive the cold, but the fire, in its imperfect form, was doing as much harm as good. Imagine, after hours of sitting by the fire, you finally get some warmth, only to realize the fire has caused a small spark to fly out of the hearth. The logs have shifted, and now the floor around the stove is smoldering. Or perhaps the chimney has become clogged with soot, making the fire burn even more dangerously. Every winter, families lived with the ever-present risk of their homes catching fire. The heat and smoke might have offered temporary comfort, but they came at the cost of danger and uncertainty. You could never relax fully, always aware of the threat of fire creeping silently in the corners of the room. Imagine, after hours of sitting by the fire, you finally get some warmth, only to realize the fire has caused a small spark to fly out of the hearth. The logs have shifted, and now the floor around the stove is smoldering. Or perhaps the chimney has become clogged with soot, making the fire burn even more dangerously. Every winter, families lived with the ever-present risk of their homes catching fire. The heat and smoke might have offered temporary comfort, but they came at the cost of danger and uncertainty. You could never relax fully, always aware of the threat of fire creeping silently in the corners of the room. The warmth you so desperately sought seemed to come at the expense of peace of mind. With each crackling sound from the fire, you could feel your nerves tighten. Every movement, every sound was a potential sign of danger. A shift in the logs, a sudden flare-up of flame, or the faintest smell of burning wood would send your heart racing. You'd get up carefully, poking the fire with a stick, pushing the logs back into place, praying that nothing would catch fire. But even as you did, you knew it was a temporary fix. The fire was never fully contained, always threatening to escape to spread to take over. It wasn't just the cold you had to fight against, it was the very thing that was supposed to save you from the fire. You begin to understand the constant tension families faced back then. The warmth, the comfort of a fire was always laced with fear. A fear that the fire might grow too big, too wild, and take the home with it. It was a strange paradox to need the warmth to survive the winter, but to live with the constant knowledge that warmth could lead to destruction. The fire which was meant to give you life could just as easily take it away. The old, inefficient stoves were no better. The cramped space in the chimney could easily cause a dangerous buildup of soot. The heat might leak out of the chimney, or worse, the chimney could catch fire itself. This wasn't just a possibility, it was a reality for countless families. The very thing that made winter survivable was also the thing that could bring it all to an end. And as the fire burned on, you couldn't help but wonder how many homes had already been lost. How many families had faced that same moment of terror when the fire grew too strong, too uncontrollable. Even during the brightest, warmest moments of the fire, you couldn't truly relax. The warmth you felt was always offset by the knowledge that you were playing with something dangerous. It wasn't like the comforts of modern life, where we can flick a switch and feel safe with heat that we know will never turn on us. Back then, every spark, every flicker of the flame was a reminder that comfort had its price. So you sat there watching the fire, carefully feeling the warmth against your skin, but always half in fear. Each crackling log, each pop of the fire echoed in your mind a reminder of the fine line between warmth and danger. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant vigilance. The fire was both your ally and your adversary, there for you when you needed it, but just as capable of bringing destruction if you let your guard down for even a moment. Imagine, as winter settled in and the cold seemed endless, you, like Benjamin Franklin, would look around and see the same frustration, the smoke, the inefficiency, the constant danger. Franklin had spent enough time thinking about this problem, and he knew there had to be a way to make the fire work better, safer, and more efficiently. After all, He had already solved some of the world's most difficult problems. So, one cold winter in 1742, while most people were still enduring the smoke-filled rooms and dangerous hearths, Franklin had a moment of clarity. He realized that the fire itself wasn't the problem, it was the way people were using it. There had to be a way to trap the heat and keep it where it was needed inside the room and not let it escape to the cold night air. It was this realization that sparked the idea for what would become the Franklin stove. Imagine, as winter settled in and the cold seemed endless, you, like Benjamin Franklin, would look around and see the same frustration, the smoke, the inefficiency, the constant danger. Franklin had spent enough time thinking about this problem, and he knew there had to be a way to make the fire work better, safer, and more efficiently. After all, he had already solved some of the world's most difficult problems. So, one cold winter in 1742, while most people were still enduring the smoke-filled rooms and dangerous hearths, Franklin had a moment of clarity. He realized that the fire itself wasn't the problem. It was the way people were using it. There had to be a way to trap the heat and keep it where it was needed inside the room and not let it escape to the cold night air. It was this realization that sparked the idea for what would become the Franklin stove. As Franklin sat by the fire, surrounded by the smoke, he must have felt the weight of years of failed attempts at staying warm. The thought of all the cold winters endured, of all the families sitting in discomfort, must have pushed him into action. There had to be a way to make the fire work harder, not just burn through fuel with little to show for it. And so, with a mind already sharpened by years of invention and experimentation, Franklin began to envision something new. He wasn't content with simply adding more logs to the fire or shifting the wood around in hopes that it might produce more heat. Instead, Franklin saw that what was missing was a system that could capture the warmth and distribute it more efficiently, preventing it from vanishing up the chimney or leaking out through the walls. He realized that to truly harness the power of the fire, the heat had to be contained, recycled, and directed in a way that could warm the room and not just the immediate space around the hearth. As the days grew colder and the nights longer, Franklin's vision began to take shape. He pictured a stove that could do what no hearth had ever been able to do before: trap the heat, circulate it, and make every corner of the room feel warm and comfortable. The design, he thought, should be compact, unlike the traditional open hearths that wasted so much fuel and space. It should have a way of directing the heat in a more controlled manner, keeping it where it was needed, and ensuring that it wasn't lost to the cold. As Franklin continued to refine the idea in his mind, he realized that the key lay in the metal. Metal had the ability to absorb heat and hold it far more efficiently than the stone or brick used in traditional fireplaces. If he could design a stove that used metal to trap and radiate heat, then it would not only make the fire burn more efficiently, but it would also keep the room warmer for longer using less fuel. Franklin saw that the metal would act as a conductor, drawing the heat away from the fire and distributing it evenly across the room, making the warmth more consistent and comfortable. The chimney was another piece of the puzzle. Instead of letting the smoke and heat escape, the chimney needed to be redesigned so that the heat could be contained within the stove. Franklin's stove would use a unique flue system, one that allowed the heat to be drawn into the metal walls, where it could circulate before being released back into the room. This would mean that the heat didn't just rise up and disappear, but was trapped and reused, making the stove far more efficient than anything people had ever used before. For Franklin, it wasn't just about warming the room, it was about rethinking how fire itself could be used to its fullest potential. In that moment of inspiration, Franklin saw the future of heating. It wasn't about bigger fires or more logs. It was about smarter fires, more efficient fires, and fires that worked with you, not against you. As Franklin sat by the fire, no doubt feeling the same frustration everyone else did, he started to mentally break down the issues he had seen with traditional stoves. Why did so much heat escape up the chimney? Why couldn't the warmth stay inside? And how could people enjoy the benefits of a fire without choking on the smoke or risking their homes to the threat of fire? Franklin knew that he couldn't just settle for the existing stoves that had been used for centuries. They were inefficient, dangerous, and didn't use the heat properly. He could picture it clearly. A stove that could take the heat from the fire and circulate it around the room, warming everyone evenly and safely. Franklin knew it was possible, and this belief was the first step toward his revolutionary invention. As Franklin sat by the fire, no doubt feeling the same frustration everyone else did, he started to mentally break down the issues he had seen with traditional stoves. Why did so much heat escape up the chimney? Why couldn't the warmth stay inside? And how could people enjoy the benefits of a fire without choking on the smoke or risking their homes to the threat of fire? Franklin knew that he couldn't just settle for the existing stoves that had been used for centuries. They were inefficient, dangerous, and didn't use the heat properly. He could picture it clearly. A stove that could take the heat from the fire and circulate it around the room, warming everyone evenly and safely. Franklin knew it was possible, and this belief was the first step toward his revolutionary invention. In that quiet moment, the answer seemed so clear to him. The key, he realized, was not just to create more heat, but to make the heat work better. He imagined a design that would be more compact than the traditional open fireplaces, one that would contain the warmth instead of letting it slip away. He envisioned a stove made of metal, something that could absorb heat and then radiate it out into the room. This way, the fire wouldn't just burn and disappear up the chimney. It could be kept inside the room, warming the air, the walls, and everyone in the room. He knew that in essence, he needed to create a heat engine of sorts, a way to make the fireworks smarter, not harder. Franklin's mind raced with ideas as he pictured the stove in greater detail. He saw the stove as a metal box, a simple design, but one that could hold the heat inside and direct it to where it was needed. He thought about how the stove would need a chimney, but this chimney would be different. It would be designed in such a way that it didn't let heat escape the way traditional stoves did. Instead, it would allow the smoke to pass through a series of channels that would circulate the air, warming the room as it went. He imagined the fire burning in one part of the stove and the heat traveling through metal flues, spreading evenly across the room. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. This was it. This was the solution that would change how people experienced winter. Franklin understood that the stove would not only save fuel by using less wood, but would also be far safer as it would reduce the risk of fire by containing both heat and smoke within the stove's metal walls. It would be a revolution in heating one that made the fire not just a temporary escape from the cold, but a reliable, constant source of warmth. He knew this design was going to be different. He could see it clearly in his mind's eye. The stove would be more than just a tool to burn wood. It would be a way to control and harness the power of the fire. It would be efficient, safe, and above all, it would work with the natural flow of heat rather than against it. Franklin felt a surge of confidence. He was on the verge of something that would not only change the way people stayed warm, but would also make their homes safer. As Franklin's idea took shape, he could almost feel the heat circulating in the room as if it was already in place. The stove would not be an object that merely burned. It would be an object that warmed, that nurtured, and that kept the home safe. He saw it in his mind, and now all that was left was to make it real. Now imagine what it must have been like for Franklin to sit down and sketch out his design. Instead of an open fireplace or a clunky stove that wasted energy, he envisioned a stove that would change everything. The Franklin stove wasn't just any stove. It had a unique shape, almost like a metal box. It wasn't tall and open like the traditional hearths. Instead, it was compact and efficient. This stove had a chimney that worked in a new way, trapping heat and allowing it to circulate through the room. The heat didn't rise and vanish. It was contained, distributed, and used to warm the entire space evenly. The metal box helped to capture the warmth, while the chimney design ensured that the heat wouldn't escape, but would instead radiate out into the room. It wasn't just a stove. It was a new way of thinking about how heat could be used. Now, imagine what it must have been like for Franklin to sit down and sketch out his design. Instead of an open fireplace or a clunky stove that wasted energy, he envisioned a stove that would change everything. The Franklin stove wasn't just any stove. It had a unique shape, almost like a metal box. It wasn't tall and open like the traditional hearths. Instead, it was compact and efficient. This stove had a chimney that worked in a new way, trapping heat and allowing it to circulate through the room. The heat didn't rise and vanish. It was contained, distributed, and used to warm the entire space evenly. The metal box helped to capture the warmth, while the chimney design ensured that the heat wouldn't escape, but would instead radiate out into the room. It wasn't just a stove, it was a new way of thinking about how heat could be used. As Franklin continued to refine the design in his mind, he realized that the key to success lay in the material he would use. Metal, with its ability to conduct and retain heat, was the perfect choice. The stove itself would be built from cast iron, which could absorb and hold on to the heat much more effectively than the stone or brick used in traditional hearths. This would allow the stove to store heat for longer, radiating warmth, even after the fire had died down. It would be more efficient using less fuel and reducing the need for constant attention. The design of the Franklin stove was revolutionary. It wasn't just about burning wood, it was about using the heat in a smart, controlled way. Franklin envisioned a stove with a complex system of flues and channels inside the metal box that would direct the heat throughout the room. The stove would have a primary chamber where the fire burned, but from there, the heat would travel through the stove's metal walls, warming them up before being released into the room. The warm air would circulate evenly, filling the space with warmth, rather than allowing it to escape up a chimney or out into the cold. The chimney, too, was a work of ingenuity. Unlike traditional chimneys that let most of the heat escape, Franklin's design included a smaller flue inside the chimney which would trap the hot air as it moved upwards. This would prevent the heat from vanishing and ensure that the warmth would stay in the room. The fire would burn more efficiently with less smoke and a more controlled flow of heat. It wasn't just the technology of the stove that was revolutionary. It was the way it changed the very concept of heating. Franklin wasn't simply trying to make a better stove. He was changing the way people thought about fire itself. The Franklin stove would allow people to stay warm without the constant battle of tending to an open flame, without the constant worry of smoke and fire hazards. It would give families a way to live through the winter months comfortably and safely, and it would do so using less fuel, which made it not only more practical, but also more economical. Franklin's vision for the stove was starting to take shape, and with each detail, he could see its potential. It would be a game changer, not just in terms of efficiency, but also in how people would experience winter. No longer would they have to huddle close to an open flame, hoping to catch enough warmth to get through the night. No longer would they have to worry about smoke filling their lungs or flames spreading out of control. Franklin was creating something that would bring warmth, safety, and peace of mind, a stove that worked with the natural flow of heat and was designed to make every home more comfortable during the harsh winter months. As Franklin refined his design, he must have felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he had created something truly revolutionary. For the first time, the heat from the fire would stay where it was needed inside the room. The stove wasn't just a simple way to burn wood. It was a carefully crafted tool that allowed the warmth to circulate and fill the room. Unlike the open flames that burned up and disappeared, this new stove kept the warmth close, wrapping the room in a gentle, consistent heat. Franklin had figured out how to make a fire work smarter, not harder. The stove's design allowed the fire to burn more efficiently using less fuel and creating less smoke while keeping the room warm and safe. This was the beginning of something that would change the way people experienced winter forever. As Franklin refined his design, he must have felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he had created something truly revolutionary. For the first time, the heat from the fire would stay where it was needed inside the room. The stove wasn't just a simple way to burn wood. It was a carefully crafted tool that allowed the warmth to circulate and fill the room. Unlike the open flames that burned up and disappeared, this new stove kept the warmth close, wrapping the room in a gentle, consistent heat. Franklin had figured out how to make a fire work smarter, not harder. The stove's design allowed the fire to burn more efficiently, using less fuel and creating less smoke while keeping the room warm and safe. This was the beginning of something that would change the way people experienced winter forever. As the days passed and the stove took shape in Franklin's mind, he could see the impact it would have. The efficiency of the design meant that people would no longer need to worry about constant log burning or the anxiety of whether the fire would keep them warm throughout the night. No longer would they have to wake in the early hours of the morning to stoke the flames. With Franklin's stove, warmth could be relied upon for longer stretches of time without constant tending. Imagine, for the first time, not needing to worry about whether the fire would go out in the middle of the night or if the cold would return when the flames died down. And then there was the safety factor. Franklin's design wasn't just about creating warmth, it was about doing so safely. Gone were the days of smoke billowing into the room, choking the air, and creating hazards with every flicker of the flame. The Franklin stove worked efficiently, containing the smoke and preventing it from overwhelming the room. It allowed families to sit together, breathe freely, and enjoy the warmth without fear of suffocation or danger from the fire. The threat of a house catching fire due to a stray spark or overflowing ash was diminished significantly with Franklin's new stove. In a world where every winter brought with it the constant risk of disaster, Franklin's stove promised a safer, more secure way of surviving the cold months. As he continued to perfect the design, Franklin must have felt a sense of pride in knowing that this stove was not just an improvement, it was a true innovation. His creation didn't just address the problems people had faced for centuries, it solved them in a way that no one had thought possible. It was a breakthrough that could change lives, making the long, bitter winters not just bearable, but livable. The stove would keep homes warmer with less fuel, and it would do so without all the associated dangers of previous methods. It wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a leap forward in how people would experience the world around them. When Franklin finally unveiled the stove, he must have felt the weight of its potential impact. He knew it wasn't just a gadget, it was a new way of life. A life where winter wasn't something to be feared, but something to be lived through with comfort and safety. This was a tool that could make families safer, healthier, and more at ease in their homes. A stove that worked with the fire, not against it, and a solution to a problem that had plagued generations. It was a design that, with its simplicity, would change the landscape of home heating forever. No more would people have to endure the inefficiency of burning wood in a hearth and watching as the warmth dissipated into the cold air. No more would they have to worry about the smoke filling the room, making it impossible to breathe or causing health problems. No more would they have to live in constant fear of the fire spreading and engulfing the home. This was more than just a stove. It was a symbol of Franklin's ingenuity and foresight. It was a reflection of his commitment to improving life for those around him, to making the world a safer, more comfortable place to live. And as the first Franklin stove was built and used, it became clear that Franklin had not only succeeded in solving a practical problem, but had also set a new standard for innovation that would influence generations to come. Now, imagine for a moment you've just installed Franklin's stove in your home. The fire crackles to life, and immediately you notice the difference. Unlike the traditional stoves you've used before, this one works in an entirely different way. Instead of letting the heat rise up the chimney and disappear into the cold night air, Franklin's stove captures it. The stove is built with a closed metal box, which absorbs the heat from the fire and helps distribute it evenly throughout the room. The design isn't just a simple containment of heat, it's a well thought out system of airflow. Heat circulates throughout the room, warming every corner. You no longer need to huddle close to the fire. The warmth reaches you wherever you sit, creating a constant, comfortable temperature. The air naturally flows, moving in harmony with the stove's design, making sure the room stays evenly warm. Now, imagine for a moment you've just installed Franklin's stove in your home. The fire crackles to life, and immediately you notice the difference. Unlike the traditional stoves you've used before, this one works in an entirely different way. Instead of letting the heat rise up the chimney and disappear into the cold night air, Franklin's stove captures it. The stove is built with a closed metal box, which absorbs the heat from the fire and helps distribute it evenly throughout the room. The design isn't just a simple containment of heat, it's a well thought out system of airflow. Heat circulates throughout the room, warming every corner. You no longer need to huddle close to the fire. The warmth reaches you wherever you sit, creating a constant, comfortable temperature. The air naturally flows, moving in harmony with the stove's design, making sure the room stays evenly warm. As you sit back and feel the warmth settle around you, it becomes clear how much smarter this stove is compared to the old ones. No longer do you have to be tied to a specific spot, desperately trying to stay near the fire to feel any heat. The air feels evenly distributed, never too hot in one corner or too cold in another. It's as though the room itself is becoming a blanket, gently wrapping around you, offering comfort from every direction. You can move freely about the room, whether you're sitting, standing, or going about your evening tasks, and the warmth follows you constant and reliable. Franklin's stove doesn't just heat the room, it creates a new kind of experience for your home. The cold that once crept in through every crack, every corner, now has to fight to stay in the room. The stove's metal body becomes a heat reservoir, absorbing the energy from the fire and slowly releasing it into the air, keeping the temperature consistent. This means that instead of feeling the intense heat of the fire in bursts, followed by chilly moments of cold, when the flames die down, you feel a steady warmth that lingers for longer. The fire may burn lower over time, but the room stays warm, and you no longer need to constantly tend to it. You might even notice that as the heat circulates through the room, it feels less dry than it did with the open hearths. Instead of the crackling heat that left the air heavy with dryness, Franklin's stove seems to maintain a balanced, comfortable atmosphere. There's no harsh draft that makes your skin feel tight or dry, and no more heavy smoke lingering in the air. It's just warm, breathable air, with none of the discomforts that used to come with the cold months. The stove keeps the warmth just right, never too overpowering, but always there, gently making the room feel cozy. As the evening wears on, you begin to notice something else. The fire, despite burning for hours, isn't consuming nearly as much wood as you expected. In the past, you'd have had to add logs to the fire every few hours, constantly keeping an eye on the flames. But with Franklin's stove, the fire burns more slowly, using up less fuel to maintain the same level of warmth. The stove has managed to make the most of every piece of wood, converting it into heat more efficiently than any open hearth could. This means less time spent chopping and gathering wood, and more time enjoying the warmth that surrounds you. In fact, it almost feels like magic, the way the fire burns so slowly, yet keeps the room warm all night long. There's no frantic need to keep stoking the fire or fearing that the warmth will suddenly disappear. Instead of constantly adding logs, you now only need to tend the fire occasionally, knowing that the stove is doing its job to keep the heat circulating. The heat doesn't dissipate as quickly. It remains where it's needed, providing comfort and consistency. The room feels warm for hours, even after the fire has reduced to glowing embers. The stove has made the fire more effective, allowing you to relax and enjoy the warmth without having to constantly monitor the flames. You might also notice how different the air feels in the room compared to previous winters. There's no harsh smoke or fumes that make you cough, no bitter sting in your eyes from the burning logs. Franklin's stove has reduced the smoke drastically. It directs the smoke up the chimney through a carefully designed system of flues, preventing it from flooding the room. The air feels fresher, cleaner, and easier to breathe. No longer do you have to worry about soot accumulating on the walls or inside the chimney. The stove has created a safer, cleaner environment, ensuring that the air stays clear and breathable even when the fire is burning at its hottest. And then there's the safety aspect. You can relax in front of the stove without worrying that an errant spark will fly out and ignite the furniture or the rug. With an open hearth, there was always the danger of something falling out of the fire and starting an uncontrollable blaze. But with Franklin's stove, the flames are safely contained within the metal box, and the fire is shielded by its carefully engineered design. The chimney is set up to funnel all the smoke safely outside, preventing any buildup of dangerous gases inside the room. The heat is controlled. The fire is secure, and there's no longer the constant fear of a stray spark causing harm. You begin to realize just how transformative this stove is, not just in terms of the warmth it provides, but in how it's changed the way you interact with your home during winter. The comfort you once had to fight for is now constant, reliable, and efficient. The stove isn't just a source of heat, it's a new way of living through the winter months. You've gone from being a slave to the fire constantly adding wood and adjusting the flames to being able to sit back and enjoy the steady warmth it provides. For the first time in years, you're not tied to the hearth. You're not constantly shivering and trying to stay close to the fire. The entire room feels warm from the farthest corner to the closest seat. The space is now livable in a way it hasn't been in the past. No more cold corners, no more needing to move from one spot to another to find warmth. Franklin's stove has transformed your experience of winter, making it not just survivable, but comfortable, safe, and dependable. As the fire burns, you realize something that had been missing from every other stove or fireplace you'd ever used. The heat is no longer escaping. The stove redirects the heat back into the room, keeping it inside where it's needed. The natural convection of the air creates a steady, even warmth. The metal of the stove is key to this process. It absorbs the heat from the fire, then radiates it out into the room, filling the space without needing to constantly throw more logs onto the fire. This efficient use of energy means that you don't need to keep adding fuel every few hours. The fire burns slower, but the room stays just as warm, using less fuel and offering more comfort. As the fire burns, you realize something that had been missing from every other stove or fireplace you'd ever used. The heat is no longer escaping. The stove redirects the heat back into the room, keeping it inside where it's needed. The natural convection of the air creates a steady, even warmth. The metal of the stove is key to this process. It absorbs the heat from the fire, then radiates it out into the room, filling the space without needing to constantly throw more logs onto the fire. This efficient use of energy means that you don't need to keep adding fuel every few hours. The fire burns slower, but the room stays just as warm, using less fuel and offering more comfort. You begin to notice how the heat from the stove spreads across the room more evenly than before. No longer are you confined to one corner to feel warmth or huddling in a single spot to catch the fire's heat. The room feels more balanced, like it's been wrapped in a warm embrace. Each corner of the space shares in the heat, creating a uniform temperature that keeps you comfortable no matter where you are in the room. Even areas of the room farthest from the stove, once cold and drafty, now feel inviting. You can walk around without worrying about the temperature dropping sharply as you move away from the hearth. The stove's design ensures that warmth isn't just concentrated in one place, it's distributed to where it's needed most. As the evening goes on, you realize that this is the first time you've ever felt truly comfortable, not only because the room is warm, but because the air feels right. It's neither too dry nor too humid. It's just the perfect balance. The heat isn't overwhelming, nor is it fleeting. Unlike the open hearth, where the warmth would often become too intense at first and then fade too quickly, Franklin's stove offers a steady, calming heat that lasts for hours. There's no need to move closer to the fire, and there's no need to fear the room becoming chilly as the fire wanes. The stove keeps everything just right. You glance at the woodpile, and you realize something else: you're using less fuel. In the past, you would have gone through more wood, constantly adding logs to the fire, making sure the flame never died down. But now, with Franklin's stove, the fire burns more efficiently. It's almost as if the stove is getting the most out of each log. You don't need to keep feeding the fire every few hours. The stove uses the fuel more wisely, meaning you'll spend less time gathering and chopping wood, and yet the room stays warm. It's an easy thing to take for granted how much less work is needed to stay warm. You've grown accustomed to the constant effort of keeping a fire alive, but now, with Franklin's stove, the warmth is almost effortless. The stove does the hard work of circulating heat, and you only need to tend to it every so often. You can enjoy the warmth without the constant upkeep. As you sit back in your chair, the comforting glow of the stove casting soft shadows in the room, you realize how this simple design has changed everything. No longer are you bound to the tedious routine of feeding the fire constantly, and no longer are you battling with the cold in the corners of the room. The Franklin stove has given you control over the warmth, something you never thought was possible with the traditional stoves and hearths you'd used before. The room feels like a sanctuary, a place of constant comfort where the temperature is always just right. And then for the first time, you truly appreciate what Franklin's stove has done. It's more than just a tool for heating. It's a solution to a problem that people have struggled with for centuries. The cold that once seemed so unbeatable is now manageable. The fire that once required constant attention now works for you quietly and efficiently. Franklin's stove doesn't just give you warmth, it gives you the peace of mind that comes with knowing you can rely on it day and night without constant effort. And as you lean back and relax, you feel grateful for the simple, brilliant innovation that's transformed this cold winter into something much more comfortable and secure. As the fire continues to burn, something else stands out. There's no smoke filling the room. In the past, the smoke from an open hearth was a constant problem, choking the air, irritating the eyes, and making it hard to breathe. With Franklin's stove, however, the smoke is contained and channeled away. The stove's clever design ensures that most of the smoke and soot is kept inside the metal walls and then directed safely outside through the chimney. The air in the room remains clear, breathable, and clean. Not only does this mean that the family is healthier, breathing less toxic air, but it also reduces the risk of soot buildup in the chimney, which had always been a fire hazard. The smoke no longer lingers in the home. It's safely vented outside, leaving you with nothing but warm, clean air. As the fire continues to burn, something else stands out. There's no smoke filling the room. In the past, the smoke from an open hearth was a constant problem, choking the air, irritating the eyes, and making it hard to breathe. With Franklin's stove, however, the smoke is contained and channeled away. The stove's clever design ensures that most of the smoke and soot is kept inside the metal walls and then directed safely outside through the chimney. The air in the room remains clear, breathable, and clean. Not only does this mean that the family is healthier, breathing less toxic air, but it also reduces the risk of soot buildup in the chimney, which had always been a fire hazard. The smoke no longer lingers in the home. It's safely vented outside, leaving you with nothing but warm, clean air. You realize how much better this is for your health. In the past, sitting by the fire wasn't just about staying warm. It was about enduring the smoke that made every breath a bit more difficult. The constant exposure to the toxic fumes from the burning wood could lead to long-term respiratory issues, especially with children and the elderly. But now, as you breathe deeply in the room, you notice how easy it feels. The air is fresh, not thick, with the scent of burning wood or smoke that clings to your clothes and hair. It's as if the stove is doing more than just providing warmth. It's creating a healthier environment. You no longer need to worry about the buildup of dangerous gases or pollutants, as the design of the stove keeps everything contained and controlled. Franklin's stove is not only making the room warmer, but also cleaner. Gone are the days of constantly wiping away soot from the walls, cleaning the fireplace, and ensuring that the chimney doesn't get clogged. With Franklin's innovation, the stove helps to keep the chimney clear, allowing the smoke to rise and exit the home without leaving behind layers of soot. The chimney is more efficient and safer, meaning you won't have to worry about dangerous obstructions or blockages that could lead to a dangerous fire. Every aspect of Franklin's stove is working in harmony to create a safer, more comfortable space. As the stove hums quietly in the corner, you can feel the difference. The warmth from the fire is evenly distributed throughout the room, and with the smoke no longer making the air heavy, it feels like the entire room is breathing easier. There's no discomfort, no need to step back from the fire to escape the sting in your eyes. You can settle in, relax, and enjoy the fire without that nagging, burning sensation in the back of your throat. The room feels healthier, more pleasant, and more inviting than it ever has before. You think about how much this design has truly revolutionized the way you experience winter. What once felt like a necessary but uncomfortable part of life has now been transformed into something that not only provides comfort, but also safety. No longer are you battling the cold and the smoke at the same time. No longer are you worried about whether the air will be breathable or if the fire will become a danger in the night. Franklin's stove has solved all of that. It's doing what no stove had ever done before, keeping you warm, safe, and healthy. The air you breathe is cleaner, the heat is more effective, and the room itself feels more like a sanctuary. In fact, as you sit there, you feel a deep sense of gratitude. You've had years of dealing with inefficient smoky fires that offered little more than a brief flicker of warmth before the cold crept back in. You've had to endure the risks of fire hazards and the constant worry about soot and smoke. But now, with Franklin's stove, all of that has changed. The room stays warm with less effort, and you're able to enjoy the heat without the constant hassle. The smoke is gone, the air is fresh, and the fire is working for you, not against you. You begin to realize how much thought and innovation Franklin must have put into the design. The efficiency of the stove isn't just about the heat, it's about creating a comfortable and safe living environment. The clever placement of the flues, the way the heat is captured and distributed, the way the smoke is redirected, all of these elements are working together in a way that was unprecedented. Franklin didn't just want to make a stove. He wanted to change how people experienced fire altogether. He wanted to create something that would give families warmth and safety without the burden of smoke and the ever-present risk of fire. As the night grows colder and the stove continues to hum softly in the background, you feel a sense of relief wash over you. The warmth is steady and comforting, and the air is clean and clear. You can relax in the knowledge that the stove is working quietly and efficiently, providing heat without danger, comfort without risk. The glow of the fire is now just a soothing addition to the room rather than the focal point of your attention as it was with old stoves. There's no need to constantly monitor it, no need to worry about the smoke or the fire getting out of hand. You can simply enjoy the warmth it provides, knowing that it's doing its job perfectly. In this new world, Franklin's stove has made winter a little more bearable, a little safer, and a lot more comfortable. The simplicity of the design, the way it works with the natural flow of heat and air, has created a living environment that is healthier, warmer, and far more pleasant than anything you've known before. For the first time in years, you can relax and enjoy the fire for what it is. Nothing more, nothing less, a source of warmth and comfort that doesn't come with any of the previous risks or inconveniences. Franklin's stove has changed everything, and you know it's a change that will last for generations to come. With Franklin's stove, the warmth in your home is no longer fleeting. The heat doesn't disappear with the flicker of the flames. It stays around, wrapping the room in a comfortable, consistent warmth. The temperature remains steady throughout the day and night, no longer requiring constant tending or adding more wood. Even as the fire begins to fade, the room stays warm, a gentle, constant temperature that makes the harshness of winter feel less oppressive. And best of all, the stove provides this comfort with less effort, less fuel, and far fewer risks. Gone are the days of struggling with uneven heat, smoke-filled rooms, or worrying about the fire burning out. Franklin's stove doesn't just make life more comfortable, it makes it safer, smarter, and more reliable. With Franklin's stove, the warmth in your home is no longer fleeting. The heat doesn't disappear with the flicker of the flames. It stays around, wrapping the room in a comfortable, consistent warmth. The temperature remains steady throughout the day and night, no longer requiring constant tending or adding more wood. Even as the fire begins to fade, the room stays warm, a gentle, constant temperature that makes the harshness of winter feel less oppressive. And best of all, the stove provides this comfort with less effort, less fuel, and far fewer risks. Gone are the days of struggling with uneven heat, smoke-filled rooms, or worrying about the fire burning out. Franklin's stove doesn't just make life more comfortable, it makes it safer, smarter, and more reliable. You begin to realize that what once was an exhausting chore, constantly feeding the fire, watching the logs burn, and adjusting the flames, has now become an effortless part of your home. No longer do you have to spend time checking the fire every hour, wondering if it has gone out or if the room is growing too cold. Franklin's stove has changed the way you experience winter, making it possible to enjoy the comfort of warmth without the constant work it used to demand. The steady warmth it provides throughout the night is especially noticeable. In the past, you'd wake in the middle of the night, chilled by the cold air, as the fire's heat dissipated. You would have to get up, add more logs, and wait for the room to warm again. But now, with Franklin's stove, you sleep soundly through the night, the warmth lingering long after the fire has dimmed. It's like having a gentle companion who makes sure you're comfortable even as you sleep. The room feels like it's being cradled in warmth, and when you wake in the morning, the chill from the night before is gone, replaced by the gentle embrace of the stove's heat. You also notice how much less fuel you're using. In the past, the constant need for firewood meant that you were always gathering and chopping, always adding logs to keep the warmth alive. But with Franklin's stove, the fire burns more slowly and efficiently. The heat radiates longer, using less wood to maintain the temperature you want. You don't need to load up the fire every few hours. The stove works smarter, not harder, and it gives you the benefit of consistent warmth without the constant strain of tending to it. This efficiency means you're saving time, energy, and effort, which allows you to enjoy more moments of peace rather than worrying about whether the fire is burning properly. As you sit back and relax, you think about how different your experience of winter is now. What once felt like a constant battle against the cold is now a manageable, even comforting part of your life. The room is warm, the air is clear, and the fire doesn't require constant attention. You can focus on other things, reading a book, enjoying a meal, or simply sitting with your loved ones without the need to constantly check the fire. The stove takes care of it for you, providing warmth that's both efficient and reliable. But perhaps the most remarkable change is the safety the stove brings. In the past, you had to be constantly vigilant watching the fire and worrying about the risk of it getting out of control. With traditional stoves and open hearths, the constant danger of a spark igniting the carpet or a stray ember catching something flammable was always in the back of your mind. Even if you were vigilant, it was never a certainty that the fire wouldn't become a hazard. Franklin's stove, however, keeps the fire contained. The design of the stove is carefully crafted to keep the flames inside where they belong. The metal box ensures that the heat is safely distributed throughout the room while preventing sparks or embers from escaping into the surrounding space. There's no need to worry about fire hazards from the stove itself. The stove isn't just a source of warmth, it's a source of safety. It brings peace of mind knowing that the fire won't burn too hot or cause unexpected damage to your home. You can enjoy the warmth without the anxiety that comes with traditional open hearths. The risks have been greatly reduced, allowing you to focus on the comfort rather than the potential danger. The clear air is another safety benefit. The smoke that used to fill the room is now safely vented outside, keeping the air clean and breathable. You no longer have to worry about inhaling toxic fumes or soot that would accumulate on the walls. Your home's indoor air quality has improved, and with it, your overall health. No more coughing from the lingering smoke. No more irritation from the fumes. The stove works in harmony with your home's ventilation system, ensuring that the smoke is channeled away and the room stays fresh and clean. As the evening draws to a close, you can feel the true value of Franklin's stove. It's not just a heating source, it's a tool that changes the way you live during the colder months. The warmth it provides is constant, reliable, and safe. The air is cleaner and the risk of fire is reduced. The work and effort of heating your home have been minimized, and in their place is a system that allows you to enjoy your space more fully. Winter, once a season of discomfort and constant vigilance, has now become a time of peace, warmth, and comfort. Franklin's stove has made that possible. And as you sit back in your chair, the gentle warmth surrounding you, you feel a deep appreciation for the thoughtfulness and ingenuity that went into its creation. What Franklin achieved wasn't just a physical device, it was a transformation in how people could live through winter. It was a solution that made everyday life easier, safer, and more comfortable. Franklin's stove wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity, and one that would continue to benefit families for generations to come. Imagine, after hearing of Franklin's new invention, people across the colonies and in Europe became eager to see if it could live up to the promise. The word spread quickly, and before long, Franklin's stove was in homes from New England to Paris. What had started as an idea to make winter more bearable for one person had become a revolution in heating for everyone. No longer did families need to endure the stifling smoke and inefficient heat of traditional open fireplaces. Now, they had a stove that not only provided warmth, but also helped clear the air. Homes once filled with the acrid scent of burning wood and choking smoke now had cleaner, more breathable air. Franklin's stove was transforming the way people lived in the coldest months. It wasn't just a luxury for the wealthy. It was an affordable, practical solution that could be used by families of all kinds, changing lives across different social classes. The stove spread quickly, becoming a household staple wherever winter's chill could be felt. Imagine, after hearing of Franklin's new invention, people across the colonies and in Europe became eager to see if it could live up to the promise. The word spread quickly, and before long, Franklin's stove was in homes from New England to Paris. What had started as an idea to make winter more bearable for one person had become a revolution in heating for everyone. No longer did families need to endure the stifling smoke and inefficient heat of traditional open fireplaces. Now, they had a stove that not only provided warmth, but also helped clear the air. Homes once filled with the acrid scent of burning wood and choking smoke now had cleaner, more breathable air. Franklin's stove was transforming the way people lived in the coldest months. It wasn't just a luxury for the wealthy, it was an affordable, practical solution that could be used by families of all kinds, changing lives across different social classes. The stove spread quickly, becoming a household staple wherever winter's chill could be felt. The impact was immediate and profound. Families no longer had to endure the struggles of inefficient heating. Before, people had to rely on large, messy fireplaces or rudimentary stoves that left them freezing when the fire waned or overwhelmed by smoke when the fire grew too strong. With Franklin's stove, those issues were solved in one fell swoop. It provided a more efficient, safer, and cleaner way to heat the home. In a world where fire was both essential and dangerous, Franklin's stove was a lifeline. For the first time, people could rely on a heat source that would provide warmth throughout the night, that didn't require constant attention, and that didn't risk their health or safety. In households across the colonies, from the rural farms of New England to the urban streets of Paris, the Franklin stove became a symbol of progress and comfort. It was simple, yet powerful, an innovation that had the potential to change not just how people stayed warm, but how they lived. Before long, the stove became so commonplace that it was seen as essential, a fundamental part of every home, regardless of wealth or status. Wealthy families could afford more elaborate versions, but even the poorest could benefit from a stove that required less fuel and offered more warmth for less effort. Franklin's stove truly leveled the playing field when it came to winter comfort. The stove's ability to provide clean, consistent heat while using less fuel was revolutionary. In many homes, the installation of a Franklin stove meant they could avoid the constant chore of chopping firewood just to stay warm. The stove used its fuel more efficiently, burning slower and using less wood to create the same amount of heat. This freed up time and energy for families who no longer had to spend all day tending to a fire or worrying about running out of fuel. The reduction in smoke was also a significant improvement. In the past, families living in homes with traditional open fireplaces had to endure the constant irritation of smoke filling the air, the soot that settled on furniture, the acrid smell that lingered in the room, and the unhealthy air they breathed. All of that became a thing of the past with Franklin's stove. As more people adopted the stove, it became clear that its impact extended beyond just providing warmth. The stove was a catalyst for healthier living conditions, improving indoor air quality, and reducing the risks associated with fire hazards. No longer did families have to worry about the buildup of soot in chimneys that could spark dangerous fires. The stove's design kept the heat and smoke contained, ensuring that the home remained safe and the air remained clean. This was a profound shift in how people could live. No longer were they at the mercy of the elements or the dangers of an open flame. They had control over their heating, and with that control came peace of mind. As the stove gained popularity, it didn't just change how people stayed warm. It changed how they viewed winter altogether. What had once been a time of discomfort and struggle became something that could be endured with ease. Families could gather together by the stove without the constant discomfort of smoke-filled rooms or the anxiety of tending to the fire. Instead of huddling close to an open flame, they could sit back and relax, knowing that the stove would keep them warm and safe. The constant cold of winter, once a harsh adversary, had now been subdued by Franklin's simple yet revolutionary invention. Soon, the Franklin stove became more than just a household necessity. It became a symbol of modernity and progress. It represented a shift in thinking, a move away from the old ways of doing things and toward a more efficient, intelligent approach to solving everyday problems. It wasn't just a tool for heating, it was a reflection of Franklin's innovative spirit. The stove's widespread use demonstrated that practical inventions could not only improve people's lives, but also shape the future of entire communities. It gave rise to a new way of living where warmth was no longer a luxury or a gamble, but a guaranteed part of every home. Even today, the impact of Franklin's stove can be felt in the way we approach heating and comfort in our homes. While the materials and technology have advanced, the core principles of Franklin's design still influence modern heating systems. The idea of capturing and circulating heat, of making energy use more efficient, and of improving indoor air quality are all concepts that began with Franklin's stove. What started as an innovation to combat the cold of winter has evolved into a standard of living that we take for granted. And though we may not use Franklin's stove in its original form today, the legacy of that simple metal box lives on in every modern heating system that brings warmth to homes across the world. Franklin's stove wasn't just an invention, it was a change in how people lived, worked, and experienced the coldest season of the year. It didn't just make winter survivable, it made it comfortable, safe, and even enjoyable. Families could gather together without fear, without discomfort, and without constant worry about the cold creeping in. And in doing so, Franklin's stove became an integral part of daily life, offering not just warmth, but peace of mind. It was and remains one of the most lasting and transformative innovations in the history of home heating. As Franklin's stove gained popularity, it became clear that this wasn't just a passing trend, it was a permanent shift in how homes were heated. Families could now go through the winter without constantly worrying about the dangers of their open fires. They no longer needed to breathe in harmful smoke or worry about their homes burning down from a stray ember. Instead, they had a system that worked with them, not against them. The stove created a new standard of comfort in homes offering consistent warmth without the risks that had come with traditional methods. The fire no longer had to be fought or managed constantly. It became a reliable, steady source of heat. Franklin's stove allowed families to live through the coldest months with ease, reducing the physical and emotional strain that had come with the winter season in the past. As Franklin's stove gained popularity, it became clear that this wasn't just a passing trend, it was a permanent shift in how homes were heated. Families could now go through the winter without constantly worrying about the dangers of their open fires. They no longer needed to breathe in harmful smoke or worry about their homes burning down from a stray ember. Instead, they had a system that worked with them, not against them. The stove created a new standard of comfort in homes offering consistent warmth without the risks that had come with traditional methods. The fire no longer had to be fought or managed constantly. It became a reliable, steady source of heat. Franklin's stove allowed families to live through the coldest months with ease, reducing the physical and emotional strain that had come with the winter season in the past. For the first time, families could gather around the warmth of the stove without the constant worry that it would go out in the night or that the smoke would fill the room, suffocating the very air they depended on. The stove allowed them to experience winter not as a battle to survive, but as a season to endure with comfort and safety. The consistent warmth created by Franklin's stove was more than just a physical comfort, it became an emotional one as well. No longer were winter evenings spent huddled in fear or discomfort. People could spend time with their families, enjoy long nights by the fire, and feel safe knowing that the stove was working tirelessly to protect them from the cold. In homes where traditional fireplaces once ruled, Franklin's stove became a beacon of reliability. People no longer had to rely on constant tending and stoking. The stove made winter nights easier to endure, providing warmth without requiring constant attention. Families who once had to prepare for a night of managing the fire could now spend their time more meaningfully. Even as the fire gradually burned lower, the stove continued to emit heat, ensuring that the room stayed warm. The amount of wood needed was dramatically reduced, freeing people from the exhausting labor of chopping and carrying logs every day. Not only did this reduce physical strain, but it also eliminated the financial burden that often came with using an open fireplace. Wood, often difficult to come by and expensive to purchase, no longer had to be used in such large quantities. The stove, using less fuel to maintain a steady level of warmth, became a much more cost-effective option. Families could enjoy the warmth they needed without worrying about constantly replenishing their stock of firewood. This practical aspect of Franklin's stove, its fuel efficiency, provided a much-needed respite from the financial strain that could often accompany winter survival. Beyond the immediate impact of warmth and comfort, Franklin's stove also contributed to the overall health and well-being of families. With the smoke and soot that once filled homes now being safely vented outside, families could breathe easier. Respiratory issues, which had been common due to the smoke inhalation from traditional stoves and fireplaces, were greatly reduced. Children, the elderly, and those with respiratory problems could now breathe freely without worrying about the harmful effects of the smoke. The stove helped to create an environment that was healthier, more comfortable, and much safer than anything people had known before. As word spread and Franklin's stove became a household staple, it represented more than just a heating solution. It symbolized progress. In an era where technological advancements were beginning to shape the way people lived, Franklin's stove was a testament to the power of invention and ingenuity. It wasn't just a response to a need, it was a transformative solution that improved the quality of life for people across social and economic lines. Whether you were in a humble cottage in the countryside or a grand home in the city, Franklin's stove made winter more bearable, more comfortable, and far safer. It was clear that Franklin's stove had done something that had never been achieved before. It made warmth reliable, safe, and efficient. What had once been a source of fear, discomfort, and exhaustion winter was now something that people could navigate with ease. And as the stove became more widely adopted, it set a new standard for how homes were heated and how people lived through the coldest months of the year. As you reflect on Franklin's invention, you realize how revolutionary it truly was. No longer did families have to rely on crude, dangerous methods to stay warm. The Franklin stove wasn't just about fire, it was about creating a safe, comfortable, and efficient way to bring warmth into homes. Its simplicity, practicality, and innovation were what made it so successful, and it would go on to influence the development of modern heating methods for centuries to come. Benjamin Franklin, already well known for his scientific discoveries and inventions, added another triumph to his legacy with the stove. It wasn't just a solution to a problem, it was a demonstration of his genius, of his ability to see beyond what was currently possible and envision something better. Franklin's stove wasn't merely a practical device, it was a symbol of innovation. It changed how people thought about fire and heating. No longer were people resigned to inefficient and dangerous methods of warming their homes. Now, they could rely on something smarter, safer, and more efficient. Franklin's stove influenced the development of heating technologies for centuries to come. It laid the groundwork for future innovations in home heating from wood stoves to modern radiators. His idea didn't just address a short-term need, it set the stage for a future where warmth was a given, not a struggle. The stove became a part of Franklin's lasting legacy, showing that one small change in thinking could revolutionize daily life. Benjamin Franklin, already well known for his scientific discoveries and inventions, added another triumph to his legacy with the stove. It wasn't just a solution to a problem, it was a demonstration of his genius, of his ability to see beyond what was currently possible and envision something better. Franklin's stove wasn't merely a practical device, it was a symbol of innovation. It changed how people thought about fire and heating. No longer were people resigned to inefficient and dangerous methods of warming their homes. Now, they could rely on something smarter, safer, and more efficient. Franklin's stove influenced the development of heating technologies for centuries to come. It laid the groundwork for future innovations in home heating from wood stoves to modern radiators. His idea didn't just address a short-term need, it set the stage for a future where warmth was a given, not a struggle. The stove became a part of Franklin's lasting legacy, showing that one small change in thinking could revolutionize daily life. As time passed, Franklin's stove became a touchstone for future engineers and inventors. The principles behind it, the efficient use of fuel, The control of heat and the management of smoke became the foundation for future developments in home heating. Franklin's design didn't just stop at one stove, it opened up a new era of possibilities. His stove was the first major step in changing the way homes were kept warm. Before his invention, people had been resigned to traditional open fires that, while effective in their own way, were messy, inefficient, and dangerous. Franklin's stove transformed that reality, making it possible to heat a room safely, efficiently, and consistently. In the years that followed, the design of the Franklin stove would inspire countless other innovations. Early 19th century wood stoves, which were designed to be more efficient than open fires built upon Franklin's basic principles. These stoves incorporated the same idea of metal as a heat conductor and included similar flue designs to help circulate heat and keep the room warm. As industrialization progressed, more advanced technologies such as coal-burning stoves and the first radiators emerged. While these innovations used different fuels, the fundamental concept of directing and circulating heat to keep rooms warm remained rooted in Franklin's original stove design. Franklin's influence on home heating was not just a passing moment in time, it laid the groundwork for future generations of inventors to build upon and improve. His stove also contributed to a shift in the way people thought about the role of technology in daily life. Before, the Franklin stove household innovations were often about making life more bearable. But Franklin's stove showed that technology could be used not only for comfort, but for safety and efficiency as well. This mindset would continue to inform future advancements in home appliances and household comfort. The idea that a well-designed, efficient, and safe home heating system could make life easier, safer, and more enjoyable became a cornerstone of modern domestic engineering. Even as modern technologies such as gas heating systems and electric radiators evolved, the underlying principles of Franklin's stove remained relevant. Engineers today still rely on the same concepts of heat exchange, the regulation of air flow, and the need for safety in heating systems. The basic idea of using a stove or radiator to transfer heat through the air, keeping rooms evenly warm, was something Franklin had perfected in the 18th century, and it continued to be the blueprint for heating technology well into the 20th century. It wasn't just about heat either. Franklin's stove also represented a shift in how people perceived their homes and their relationship with the environment. The stove made it possible to keep the home warm without relying on the constant burning of wood or coal. It reduced the amount of fuel needed to maintain a comfortable temperature, which in turn reduced deforestation and the environmental impact of constant fuel consumption. The stove marked the beginning of a new era in which people began to think more critically about the resources they were using and how they could optimize them for both comfort and sustainability. Even today, as we strive for more sustainable energy practices, Franklin's original ideas about energy efficiency and resource management continue to influence how we think about home heating. Perhaps most importantly, Franklin's stove shifted the way people experienced winter. What had once been a season of hardship and discomfort became more manageable, even pleasant. Winter no longer had to be endured with constant labor and worry. The stove offered families a way to make the most of the cold months, enjoying warmth without the struggle. It made winter an easier season to live through, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone. This was one of Franklin's greatest contributions, a practical, widely accessible invention that improved the lives of countless people. As you reflect on the legacy of Franklin's stove, it becomes clear how much more it was than just a heating device. It was an innovation that touched nearly every aspect of daily life. It was a symbol of the power of invention and the ability to see beyond the present into a future where life could be easier, safer, and more efficient. Franklin's stove didn't just solve a problem, it revolutionized an entire way of life. And that's why, centuries later, we still look back on it as one of Franklin's most significant contributions to both science and society. Today, when we turn on our thermostats or light a fire in a modern stove, we might not think of Franklin's stove, but his impact is still felt. His understanding of how heat flows, how air circulates, and how fire can be used efficiently shaped the future of home heating. The principles that Franklin established in his stove can be seen in the technology that powers modern heating systems, from the efficient burning of fuels to the careful circulation of heat throughout the room. His innovation helped lay the foundation for the heating systems we rely on today. Franklin's stove not only made winter more comfortable during his time, but also changed the way we approach heating for generations. As we sit in warm homes on cold winter nights, we can trace that comfort back to Franklin's brilliant solution to the age-old problem of staying warm in winter. Today, when we turn on our thermostats or light a fire in a modern stove, we might not think of Franklin's stove, but his impact is still felt. His understanding of how heat flows, how air circulates, and how fire can be used efficiently shaped the future of home heating. The principles that Franklin established in his stove can be seen in the technology that powers modern heating systems, from the efficient burning of fuels to the careful circulation of heat throughout the room. His innovation helped lay the foundation for the heating systems we rely on today. Franklin's stove not only made winter more comfortable during his time, but also changed the way we approach heating for generations. As we sit in warm homes on cold winter nights, we can trace that comfort back to Franklin's brilliant solution to the age-old problem of staying warm in winter. It's easy to overlook how deeply his work influenced the systems we take for granted now. The modern radiators that heat homes, the gas furnaces that keep us warm through the winter months, and even the central heating systems that make life in cold climates much more comfortable. All of these share a direct lineage with Franklin's stove. His insight into the need for efficient, controlled, and safe heating systems was a breakthrough that set the stage for all these developments. Franklin didn't just invent a stove, he laid the groundwork for an entire industry, one that would continue to evolve for centuries. His stove was not just a product of its time, it was a seed planted for the future of home comfort. By focusing on heat distribution and efficiency, Franklin's design created a model for how homes should be heated, one that would eventually give rise to the advanced energy efficient systems we now use. Modern engineers and inventors may not directly model their work on Franklin's stove, but his principles of heat circulation, energy efficiency, and safety remain the core of today's heating solutions. When you think about the way we heat our homes today, it's clear that Franklin's stove changed the world. Before his invention, homes were cold, uncomfortable, and dangerous during the winter months. People had to rely on inefficient and hazardous methods of heating. But Franklin's stove offered a new way of thinking about fire and heat, and it provided a reliable solution that made homes safer and more comfortable. That legacy lives on in every furnace, every radiator, every heater that runs in homes around the world today. But Franklin's stove wasn't just about physical warmth. It was about the peace of mind that came with it. It was about making winter a time to be endured in comfort, not a time of hardship. By solving a simple problem with an elegant, efficient design, Franklin created a lasting legacy that goes beyond heating. His invention demonstrated that one small change could dramatically improve daily life. In doing so, he not only made winters easier for his contemporaries, but also improved the lives of countless generations that followed. Even as we've moved into the era of electric heating and advanced HVAC systems, Franklin's principles remain just as relevant. The idea of controlling airflow, circulating heat, and using resources more efficiently continues to guide the development of new heating technologies. We now live in an era where our homes are warmed by methods that wouldn't have been possible without Franklin's vision of a more efficient, effective way of using fire. And just as Franklin's stove offered warmth and safety to those in his time, modern heating systems continue to provide comfort, efficiency, and reliability to families everywhere. So, next time you turn on the heat or enjoy the warmth in your home, take a moment to appreciate the vision of Benjamin Franklin. His stove didn't just improve winter living, it revolutionized it, creating the foundation for the heating systems we now rely on every day. The warmth that keeps us comfortable today has its roots in Franklin's genius, and his legacy will continue to shape how we experience the cold for many years to come. Today, when we flick a switch or adjust a thermostat to get warmth, we may not realize it, but we're benefiting from the very principles Franklin laid down with his stove. Modern heating systems, from the sleek, gas-powered fireplaces to advanced central heating systems still rely on the same core ideas he implemented centuries ago. The basic concept of efficient heat distribution, heat retention, and minimizing wasteful fuel consumption are central to how we heat our homes today. Even in the more modern stoves and radiators, Franklin's innovative spirit lives on. His understanding of how heat flows, how air circulates, and how fire can be used efficiently shaped the way we think about home heating. It's fascinating to think that what was once a novel idea, trapping and circulating heat, is now a standard feature in virtually every modern home, making it clear just how far-reaching Franklin's influence has been. Today, when we flick a switch or adjust a thermostat to get warmth, we may not realize it, but we're benefiting from the very principles Franklin laid down with his stove. Modern heating systems, from the sleek, gas-powered fireplaces to advanced central heating systems, still rely on the same core ideas he implemented centuries ago. The basic concept of efficient heat distribution, heat retention, and minimizing wasteful fuel consumption are central to how we heat our homes today. Even in the more modern stoves and radiators, Franklin's innovative spirit lives on. His understanding of how heat flows, how air circulates, and how fire can be used efficiently shaped the way we think about home heating. It's fascinating to think that what was once a novel idea, trapping and circulating heat, is now a standard feature in virtually every modern home, making it clear just how far-reaching Franklin's influence has been. The evolution of home heating from Franklin's stove to the modern central heating systems of today is a testament to the power of his invention. Central heating systems, whether they run on gas, electricity, or even renewable energy, still rely on the same foundational principles Franklin established: distributing heat evenly throughout a space, ensuring that the warmth remains where it's needed, and using energy as efficiently as possible. These modern systems, whether radiators, underfloor heating, or forced air systems, work to create a comfortable environment by relying on heat exchange, insulation, and airflow. All concepts Franklin integrated into his stove. Franklin's ability to visualize and solve problems before his time gave birth to solutions that continue to evolve. His work laid the groundwork for modern engineers and architects to create homes that are not only warmer, but also more energy efficient. In fact, the principles of heat circulation and energy efficiency that Franklin developed in the 18th century are increasingly important today as we seek to make our homes more sustainable and reduce our carbon footprints. The desire for more efficient, environmentally friendly energy systems, such as heat pumps and solar-powered heating, echoes Franklin's innovative spirit. Moreover, Franklin's stove was a precursor to the modern quest for better building practices. His stove wasn't just about heating. It changed the way homes were constructed. As people began to adopt his stove, they also started to build their homes differently, with better insulation, improved chimneys, and more efficient use of space. This led to a shift in how homes were designed and built in colder climates. The need to minimize heat loss and make heating systems more effective became an integral part of architecture, and Franklin's design played a significant role in shaping these changes. As we continue to innovate and find new ways to heat our homes, it's clear that Franklin's contributions still inform the conversation. His original stove was a response to a simple need warmth during the harsh winter months. However, the impact of his innovation stretched far beyond the fireplace. His ability to look at the everyday problems of his time and devise solutions that were both practical and visionary created a legacy that still influences us today. In every furnace radiator and modern heating system, we see the fingerprints of Franklin's genius, proving that one simple idea crafted with intention and ingenuity can change the world for generations to come. Even as we embrace new technologies in the realm of heating and energy, the fundamental principles of efficiency, heat management, and safety remain grounded in the legacy Franklin established. The next time you turn up the heat or cozy up next to a modern radiator, remember that it all began with a simple, brilliant idea from Benjamin Franklin. His stove wasn't just a solution to the cold, it was a blueprint for how we could live smarter, more comfortably, and more efficiently. In a world of constant technological advancement, Franklin's impact on the way we heat our homes serves as a lasting reminder of the power of innovation and how a single idea can ripple through time, continuing to shape our lives today. You might not always notice it, but when you turn on your home's heating system, you're using a technology born from Franklin's stove. Modern stoves, fireplaces, and even radiators all incorporate the same fundamental concepts that Franklin first applied using materials that can efficiently absorb and radiate heat, creating a controlled and consistent flow of warmth, and ensuring that heat doesn't just rise and escape into the air, but is instead used to benefit the entire room. His design laid the groundwork for these technologies, making homes warmer and more comfortable with less energy. The efficiency of modern heating systems is a direct descendant of Franklin's stove, which turned the fight against the winter chill into a smarter, more sustainable solution. It's a testament to Franklin's brilliance that even centuries later, we are still benefiting from the principles he applied in his stove. You might not always notice it, but when you turn on your home's heating system, you're using a technology born from Franklin's stove. Modern stoves, fireplaces, and even radiators all incorporate the same fundamental concepts that Franklin first applied using materials that can efficiently absorb and radiate heat, creating a controlled and consistent flow of warmth, and ensuring that heat doesn't just rise and escape into the air, but is instead used to benefit the entire room. His design laid the groundwork for these technologies, making homes warmer and more comfortable with less energy. The efficiency of modern heating systems is a direct descendant of Franklin's stove, which turned the fight against the winter chill into a smarter, more sustainable solution. It's a testament to Franklin's brilliance that even centuries later, we are still benefiting from the principles he applied in his stove. The very idea of optimizing energy use in heating systems, whether through the design of radiators, the careful placement of vents, or the efficiency of modern wood-burning stoves, stems from Franklin's revolutionary work. By focusing on reducing waste and ensuring that heat worked in harmony with the space it was supposed to warm, Franklin's stove set a new standard for efficiency. Modern heating systems take those same principles and enhance them with advanced materials like ceramics, metal alloys, and even smart technology to further improve how heat is distributed and used. This seamless transfer of heat from the fuel source into the surrounding space continues to define how we heat our homes today, proving that Franklin's ingenuity has transcended time and still informs the design of our most sophisticated heating solutions. Moreover, Franklin's stove didn't just change how homes were heated, it also influenced the evolution of building practices and home design. As people adopted his stove, it became clear that heating a home efficiently meant thinking about the structure itself. The use of insulating materials and careful planning of air circulation became more important. Builders began to design homes with better insulation and the strategic placement of windows and doors to retain heat. Franklin's invention acted as a catalyst for these broader changes, encouraging not only better heating systems, but also a more thoughtful approach to how buildings were constructed to optimize energy use. The idea that a home could be built to keep warmth in rather than letting it escape through poorly designed spaces became an important part of architectural practices for generations to come. And while we may take the warmth of our homes for granted today, it's important to remember that Franklin's stove wasn't just about providing comfort. It was about advancing a deeper understanding of energy. At the time, fire was the primary source of heat, and Franklin recognized that it didn't have to be wasteful or dangerous. His stove proved that energy could be harnessed more effectively, paving the way for further innovations in energy efficiency. Even as our reliance on wood-burning stoves has decreased, the principle of efficiently using energy to maintain comfort remains central to how we heat our homes. From electric heat pumps to solar-powered systems, Franklin's focus on efficiency, conservation, and smarter use of resources continues to guide modern energy solutions. In the context of today's world, as we become more aware of our environmental impact, Franklin's stove serves as a reminder of the importance of sustainable innovation. His ability to envision a heating system that not only improved daily life, but did so with less environmental cost is increasingly relevant as we strive to reduce our carbon footprints. Modern heating systems, whether through the use of renewable energy, advanced insulation, or energy-efficient stoves are all rooted in the same principles of efficiency, sustainability, and safety that Franklin pioneered. In this sense, Franklin's stove was far ahead of its time, laying the groundwork for a future where comfort and sustainability go hand in hand. As we move further into an era where energy conservation is paramount, we can look back at Franklin's stove as one of the earliest examples of how thoughtful, purposeful design can solve everyday problems while making a lasting positive impact on the world. The technology we use today is more advanced, of course, but its roots trace back to Franklin's simple, practical solution to the problem of heating homes. By thinking outside the box and focusing on efficiency, Franklin didn't just solve the problem of warmth in winter. He set the stage for a future of smarter, more sustainable energy use, a future that, thanks to his innovative thinking, we continue to build upon today. Franklin's stove wasn't just about surviving the winter, it was about making life better, safer, and more comfortable. When he looked at the world around him, he didn't accept the status quo. He saw that the traditional methods of heating homes were inefficient and dangerous, and he set out to change that. His invention didn't just provide warmth, it created a new standard for comfort. The ability to have consistent warmth without the constant battle of smoke and fire hazards made homes safer and healthier, reducing the risks of respiratory problems and fires. It allowed families to live through the winter months with greater ease, comfort, and security. And that's the true power of innovation, not just solving a problem, but improving the quality of life in profound and lasting ways. Franklin's stove was a reminder that one simple idea, one insight into how the world works, can have ripple effects that change everything. Franklin's stove wasn't just about surviving the winter. It was about making life better, safer, and more comfortable. When he looked at the world around him, he didn't accept the status quo. He saw that the traditional methods of heating homes were inefficient and dangerous, and he set out to change that. His invention didn't just provide warmth, it created a new standard for comfort. The ability to have consistent warmth without the constant battle of smoke and fire hazards made homes safer and healthier, reducing the risks of respiratory problems and fires. It allowed families to live through the winter months with greater ease, comfort, and security. And that's the true power of innovation, not just solving a problem, but improving the quality of life in profound and lasting ways. Franklin's stove was a reminder that one simple idea, one insight into how the world works, can have ripple effects that change everything. Before Franklin's stove, winter was something that had to be endured, not enjoyed. It was a time of hardship where people were forced to work tirelessly just to stay warm. Every family was tied to the exhausting, inefficient task of maintaining an open flame or a poorly designed stove. The smoke filled the room. The heat barely made a dent in the cold, and the danger of fire was a constant threat. Franklin didn't just want to fix one of these problems, he sought to eliminate them all at once. He gave people the gift of warmth that didn't just stay near the fire, but spread through the entire room, allowing families to feel comfortable and secure. His stove allowed them to sit back and enjoy their homes rather than be consumed by the daily task of stoking fires and cleaning soot. Franklin's stove also marked the beginning of a shift in how people thought about energy. Before his invention, energy was simply something that came from fire burn it, and you got warmth with no thought for how to use that energy efficiently. Franklin understood that energy didn't have to be wasted. It could be captured, stored, and used more effectively. By focusing on efficiency, he made the fire work for the people, not the other way around. His stove transformed what had been a crude, inefficient process into something that functioned seamlessly, turning fire from a constant battle into a dependable ally. As families adopted Franklin's stove, they no longer had to worry about the uneven distribution of heat or the discomfort of sitting in a room where some areas were freezing while others were unbearably hot. The stove's design ensured that warmth flowed evenly throughout the room, keeping everyone comfortable no matter where they sat. This innovation didn't just change how people lived, it changed the way they experienced winter. The home, once a place of refuge from the cold, became a place of refuge from the danger and inefficiency of old heating methods. Franklin's stove made the home a sanctuary, offering not just warmth, but peace of mind. In addition to providing comfort, Franklin's stove also improved the health of those who used it. Smoke inhalation had been a major health issue, especially for children and the elderly, who were most vulnerable to the toxic effects of constant exposure to wood smoke. Chronic respiratory problems were common in homes with traditional stoves and open hearths. With Franklin's stove, however, the smoke was contained and directed outside, ensuring that the air inside the home remained clean. This simple design change made the air safer to breathe and helped families avoid the long-term health issues that had plagued them before. It was a quiet revolution in home health, showing how a small change could create a healthier living environment without requiring any extra effort. Furthermore, Franklin's stove played a crucial role in reducing the danger of house fires, which were all too common in homes that relied on open fires for heating. The new stove, with its enclosed design and carefully managed airflow, prevented dangerous sparks from escaping and kept the fire contained. This simple yet effective change drastically reduced the likelihood of a fire spreading to the rest of the house. Families no longer had to live with the constant fear that their fire might get out of control and destroy everything they had worked for. The safety of the stove meant that people could enjoy the warmth it provided without the ever-present anxiety that came with traditional heating methods. The stove's impact extended beyond just providing warmth and safety. It also helped to redefine the way people viewed the winter months. In the past, winter had been a time of struggle and hardship, a season to endure rather than enjoy. But with Franklin's stove, the equation changed. Families could now enjoy their homes, even in the coldest months, knowing that they were not constantly fighting the elements. They could spend more time with loved ones, play games read by the fire, or simply rest without the discomfort of a cold, smoky home. Franklin's stove transformed winter from a season of hardship into a season of comfort, security, and togetherness. This shift in perception was profound. It wasn't just about surviving the winter, it was about reclaiming the joy of home life during a time when people had once dreaded the cold months. The stove gave people the freedom to live their lives without constantly battling the cold. It created a new dynamic in how families could function during winter, allowing them to focus on what truly mattered, spending time together, and enjoying the warmth of their home rather than just surviving the season. As you reflect on the broader impact of Franklin's stove, it's clear that it wasn't just an invention, it was a catalyst for change. It didn't just make winter survivable, it made it enjoyable. It didn't just provide warmth, it provided safety, comfort, and peace of mind. Franklin's stove didn't just solve a problem, it transformed people's lives in ways that continue to resonate today. The ripple effect of his innovation reached far beyond the immediate context of heating homes. It set a precedent for future innovations, showing that one simple idea could create lasting change. In a world that is constantly evolving, Franklin's stove serves as a reminder of the power of innovation. It reminds us that even the smallest idea, one that addresses an everyday problem, can have a profound and lasting impact. Franklin didn't just invent a stove, he changed how we experience winter, how we live, and how we think about comfort and efficiency. And in doing so, he created a legacy that has lasted for centuries, influencing generations of inventors, engineers, and everyday people seeking to make their lives easier, safer, and more comfortable. As you sit in your warm home enjoying the comfort of modern heating, it's easy to forget that this warmth, this comfort, is the result of Franklin's vision. His stove was a small change, a seemingly simple solution to an everyday problem, but its impact has been nothing short of revolutionary. It wasn't just about making winter bearable, it was about changing how people live, how they experience their homes, and how they interact with their environment. Franklin's legacy is a reminder of the power of innovation, of the ability to look at a problem and find a solution that not only addresses the immediate need, but improves life as a whole. One simple invention, the Franklin stove has lasted for centuries, shaping the way we heat our homes and experience the cold. The next time you feel the warmth of a modern heater, remember Franklin's stove. And remember that innovation at its best creates a lasting legacy that continues to improve lives for generations. As you sit in your warm home, enjoying the comfort of modern heating, it's easy to forget that this warmth, this comfort, is the result of Franklin's vision. His stove was a small change, a seemingly simple solution to an everyday problem, but its impact has been nothing short of revolutionary. It wasn't just about making winter bearable. It was about changing how people live, how they experience their homes, and how they interact with their environment. Franklin's legacy is a reminder of the power of innovation, of the ability to look at a problem and find a solution that not only addresses the immediate need, but improves life as a whole. One simple invention, the Franklin stove, has lasted for centuries, shaping the way we heat our homes and experience the cold. The next time you feel the warmth of a modern heater, remember Franklin's stove. And remember that innovation at its best creates a lasting legacy that continues to improve lives for generations. This lasting impact isn't just about comfort. It's about how Franklin's stove paved the way for an entire approach to technology and problem solving. His approach was based on understanding the underlying needs and then finding a practical, sustainable solution. At a time when people accepted inefficient, hazardous methods as the norm, Franklin had the foresight to challenge the status quo. He didn't just invent a stove that would keep people warm. He revolutionized how we think about energy heat and even safety in the home. In today's world, we often take for granted the warmth provided by our modern systems, not fully recognizing how advanced the concept of home heating has become. Yet, when we pause to think about it, the thread of Franklin's ingenuity is present in every system that keeps us warm today. The modern furnaces, radiators, and even electric heaters that are now ubiquitous in homes around the world are all built on the basic principles of efficient heat distribution and energy conservation that Franklin set in motion with his stove. His invention also opened the door for other innovations in household comfort and safety. For example, the creation of insulated homes, the development of more efficient stoves, and even the push for cleaner energy alternatives are all linked to the same mindset Franklin used to craft his stove. When people started to see how much more efficient Franklin's stove was compared to open fireplaces, it became clear that innovation could transform not just one aspect of life, but entire industries. This mindset encouraged further development in home comfort and energy use, leading to the sophisticated systems we rely on today, from energy-efficient heating to smart thermostats that maintain an ideal temperature with minimal energy consumption. Franklin's stove was also a precursor to modern environmental awareness. While it was primarily designed to solve the problem of inefficient heating, it also helped to create a mindset about the responsible use of resources. By using less fuel to produce more heat, Franklin's stove showed that sustainability could be achieved without sacrificing comfort or safety. This early understanding of energy efficiency resonates today as we look to renewable energy sources and eco-friendly home heating solutions. The seeds of sustainability that Franklin planted in the 18th century continue to influence how we think about energy usage in our homes and across the world. In terms of social impact, Franklin's stove also made winter more accessible. For the first time, people from all walks of life could access a safer, more efficient heating solution. Whether in a modest farmhouse or a bustling city apartment, Franklin's stove made it possible for families of varying means to experience a level of comfort that had previously been reserved for the wealthier classes. The stove's design made it affordable for many households, contributing to a greater sense of equity and quality of life across social strata. As the stove spread across Europe and the colonies, it helped to democratize warmth in a way that had never been possible before. It wasn't just the rich who could enjoy warm homes anymore. Now, everyone could feel the benefits of Franklin's insight. Looking back at Franklin's work, it's clear that he didn't just solve a problem, he sparked a movement. His invention of the stove created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the cold winter months. His ability to observe, innovate, and improve upon existing solutions set the stage for generations of thinkers, engineers, and inventors to follow in his footsteps. Franklin's vision for practical, everyday solutions changed the trajectory of technological development and laid the groundwork for the modern world we live in today. As we continue to innovate and build on the lessons of the past, Franklin's stove remains a touchstone for what it means to invent with purpose. It reminds us that the best inventions don't just solve a problem, they improve life, they make the world better, and they leave a lasting legacy. Franklin didn't just give us warmth, he gave us the ability to think about problems in new ways, to innovate for the betterment of society, and to create technologies that serve a higher purpose. The next time you feel the warmth of your home, remember that it's not just the result of modern technology. It's also the legacy of one man's vision. A vision that continues to shape how we live today. So the next time you find yourself cozy and warm, remember that it all started with a simple, clever design by Benjamin Franklin. His stove helped countless families stay warm during the coldest winters and continues to inspire modern heating solutions. What began as a solution to a small problem, how to keep a home warm and safe during the bitter months of winter, became one of the most influential innovations in the history of home comfort. Franklin's insight into the flow of heat, the need for efficiency, and the importance of safety fundamentally changed how people experience the cold. His design didn't just provide a better way to heat a home, it set the stage for the technologies we rely on today. The stove's legacy lives on in every modern heating system, from wood stoves to central heating systems, radiators, and even smart thermostats. Franklin's work serves as a reminder that innovation doesn't always come from solving grand complex problems. It can also stem from rethinking something as basic as how to keep your home warm. His stove was a game changer, but it was also a simple idea that over time transformed how generations of people experienced winter and home comfort. And now, as you drift off to sleep, imagine the warmth of a crackling fire, the soft glow of the stove's heat, and the comfort of knowing that Franklin's invention has kept homes warm for centuries. Picture yourself wrapped in warmth, safe and secure from the winter's chill, knowing that this innovation, born centuries ago, continues to make homes around the world feel like sanctuaries in the coldest months. Franklin's stove was not just an invention, it was a gift that has been passed down through generations, shaping the way we live, keeping us comfortable, and offering peace of mind in a world that can sometimes be too cold, too harsh. Let this story of ingenuity and warmth guide you to a restful night's sleep. As you feel the warmth of your own home, know that you are connected to a long history of people who found comfort in Franklin's vision. His stove wasn't just about heating it, was about making life better, safer, and more comfortable. And as you lay your head down tonight, let that comfort fill your thoughts. Feel the warmth wrapping around you like the soft embrace of history itself, reminding you that even the simplest ideas can have lasting, world-changing effects. Good night, and may your dreams be as warm as the homes Franklin's stove helped create.